Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mini Books Podcast with your host, Gloria and Rogan. And today we are excited to dive into Special Book with You. We picked this one because it has really important lessons to share, and we can't wait to talk about them. So let's get started. Ever find yourself in a situation, maybe at a party or a networking event, and you just dread that moment when you're stuck making small talk?
Oh, absolutely. I think we've all been there.
Yeah, like you'd rather walk on hot coals than navigate those initial awkward minutes of a conversation, right?
It's funny how something small can feel so monumental sometimes.
Exactly. And that's precisely why we're diving into Debra Fine's The Fine Art of Small Talk in this deep dive.
Such a great read.
It really is. She breaks down how those seemingly insignificant chit-chats, the ones we often try to avoid, they can actually be the key to unlocking deeper connections, even unexpected opportunities.
It's true. Fine argues that small talk is the foundation for building rapport. It's not about being the life of the party or wowing people with your wit.
Right. And what I found really interesting about Fine's story is that she wasn't always this small talk guru. She actually describes herself as a self-proclaimed nerd who used to dread social gatherings.
I can relate to that.
Yeah. She even admits to, get this, hiding in the bathroom at parties just to avoid those awkward interactions. Can you imagine?
That just shows you it's a learned skill. You're not born a small talk expert.
Exactly. And her book really breaks down the process of how she transformed herself from someone who dreaded small talk to someone who could confidently navigate any social situation.
And the best part is, it works. She actually shares anecdotes about how she met some of her closest friends and colleagues through, you guessed it, small talk.
Like the time she met her best friend at a bar. Talk about proof that small talk can lead to lasting connections.
Exactly. It's not just about friendships either. Studies show those who engage in regular small talk tend to have stronger professional networks, perform better in job interviews, even report higher levels of happiness and well-being.
Okay, I'm sold. So how do we go from bathroom hiding to small talk champion? Let's unpack some of the practical techniques Fine outlines in her book. You know those moments when you're standing there like tongue-tied, trying to figure out what to say to break the ice?
Oh yeah, we've all been there.
Well, Fine actually calls those first few words icebreakers, and she has some surprisingly creative ideas going way beyond the typical, like, nice weather we're having kind of thing.
Right. She emphasizes authenticity, being observant, really looking for those little details that can spark a genuine connection.
So it's like being a conversational detective almost. Like, did you notice they're wearing a band you love on their shirt? Or maybe you overheard them mention a book you've read and love.
Exactly. Those are your entry points.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you don't immediately spot a shared interest, she's a big proponent of the power of a simple compliment. Like, hey, I love your necklace. Where did you find it?
Right, so it's about finding that common ground, even if it's just admiring a cool piece of jewelry or something.
Absolutely.
So once you've broken the ice, Fine says the real key to keeping that conversation going is all about mastering the art of asking open-ended questions.
This is where things get really interesting, right? Because we've all probably fallen in the trap of asking those yes or no questions that can lead to those conversational dead ends. So instead, Fine suggests, really thinking about how you frame your questions in a way that invites people to share more.
Give me an example.
Okay, so instead of just asking, did you have a good weekend? Try something like, what was the highlight of your weekend?
Oh, I like that.
You see how it kind of shifts the whole dynamic?
It's subtle, but yeah, it makes a big difference because now you're not just going through the motions, you're actually inviting them to tell their story.
Exactly. It reminds me, actually, I was at this conference a while back feeling completely out of my element, and I started chatting with someone at the coffee station. And I remembered Fine's advice. So I asked him, what's been the most interesting thing you've learned at the conference so far? And honestly, that one question sparked this whole conversation about their work, the challenges they were facing, some innovative solutions they were exploring. We ended up talking for almost an hour.
Wow.
So it really just drove home that point for me, that open-ended questions can be like these magical keys that unlock these hidden depths in a conversation.
I love that analogy. Okay, so open-ended questions, definitely adding that to my toolkit. Now, Fine also talks about the importance of active listening, which seems obvious, but I think it's something we often forget in the heat of the moment. So active listening, we talk about it all the time, right?
Right.
But it's really more than just, not interrupting someone, right?
For sure.
In fact, Fine tells this pretty funny story about her own dad, who had this habit of, well, never interrupting anyone. He thought he was being polite.
Oh, no. How did that go over?
Well, it turns out people actually thought he wasn't interested in what they were saying because he was so quiet.
Oh, wow. The opposite effect.
Definitely. And so Fine uses that story to illustrate how active listening, it's not just about like not talking. It's about those little cues we can give to show we're engaged.
Right, like those little nods, those,
Sorry to interrupt you guys. If you're enjoying this podcast, then don't forget to check out our official YouTube channel, Mini Books Podcast, and subscribe for more great podcasts like this one.
or, that tell me more. That
Yeah.
shows the other person you're right there with them.
Exactly. And one of the most powerful ways to show you're really tuned in, according to Fine, remembering names.
It's amazing how much of a difference it makes, right?
Oh, absolutely. She actually dedicates a whole section in her book to this, arguing that remembering someone's name is like the secret weapon for instantly building rapport.
It totally is.
Yeah.
Like, immediately you're making that person feel seen, like they matter.
Exactly. And she offers some clever strategies for doing it. Like when you first meet someone, try repeating their name back to them.
Oh, that's a good one. I've heard that before.
Yeah, and even try like visualizing it spelled out in your mind. I mean, whatever works, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever helps you solidify it.
Mm-hmm.
I also like her suggestion of associating the name with something memorable about the person. Like,
Yeah.
if you meet someone named Sarah and she's wearing a bright yellow dress, think to yourself, Sarah, sunshine yellow.
I love that. So you're basically creating this mental image that links the name to something you won't forget. Okay, but even armed with all the best small talk tips, let's be real, sometimes conversations can still go a little sideways.
Totally.
And Fine acknowledges that, there are these conversational pitfalls we can fall into. She even has this term, conversational criminals.
Oh, yes. That's a great chapter.
Right. It's like she's put together this lineup of all the people you dread getting stuck talking to.
Like the FBI agents,
Mm.
always grilling you with a million questions.
Ah, the worst. Or the braggarts who somehow manage to turn every topic back to themselves.
Oh, and how could we forget the one-uppers? Those people who always have to top your story.
Every time. But, and this is the best part, Fine doesn't just leave us hanging with a rogues gallery of conversational nightmares. She actually gives us strategies for how to deal with each of these criminals.
Yes, and it all comes back to, like, remembering your goal in that moment.
Right.
You're not trying to, like, change their personality or win an argument. It's really just about navigating that conversation in a way that feels, pleasant and engaging.
So it's about having those tools in your back pocket. Like, she gives this great example for dealing with a know-it-all.
Let's hear it.
She suggests gently redirecting the conversation back to them by asking something like, what is your experience with this?
Oh, I love that.
Right,
Yeah.
because you're acknowledging their, supposed expertise without letting them totally dominate the conversation.
Exactly. You're subtly shifting the balance.
Exactly. And if all else fails, Fine reminds us that it's more than okay to politely excuse yourself from a conversation that's going nowhere.
Right. Sometimes a graceful exit is the best strategy.
Totally. She even gives us some good exit lines we can use, like, it's been so nice chatting, but I promised myself I'd meet 3 new people tonight.
I love that. And it's true. Sometimes you got to mingle.
Exactly. Although she does stress the importance of actually following through on whatever reason you give for bowing out.
Right. Don't say you're going to grab a drink and then get caught hiding behind a potted plant.
Exactly. Be genuine, be engaging, be interested. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the fine art of small talk, it's clear that this book is about so much more than just like surviving those awkward social situations,
Yeah.
right? It's about empowering ourselves to build those meaningful connections, unlock opportunities, and really boost, I think, even our own happiness and well-being.
It really is. Because those connections, those conversations, those are the threads that weave together the tapestry of our lives.
Beautifully said. And like anything else, it's a skill you can practice and get better at. The more you put yourself out there, the easier those conversations become. So tell us, what's one conversation you've been putting off because maybe you were dreading the small talk? What could you do today to make that connection, start that conversation, and see where it leads? Maybe it's reaching out to a potential mentor, striking up a chat with a colleague you admire, or even just saying hello to that intriguing person you always see at the coffee shop. Go for it. You never know what amazing opportunities await. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this conversation and want to dive into more book insights and key learnings, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Mini Books Podcast, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We're back every Sunday at 9 a.m. with new books and more to learn from. Until next time, take care, keep learning, and keep growing. Remember, this is Mini Books Podcast.